Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with sweet hot mustard chicken thighs. That's right, I enjoy sweet hot in any context, but especially food. And when it comes to mustard, sweet hot works amazingly well, especially when you're talking about as a glaze for chicken. And even though we're going to use skin-on, bone-in chicken thighs here, I'm pretty sure this is going to work with any cut of chicken. Okay? So step one, we're going to prepare the chicken for the marinade. Like I said, we're using bone-in, but we're going to flip it over so the skin side's up, because all we're going to do is make 2 nice slashes right into that chicken thigh. And I like to kind of gather it up, kind of bunch up that chicken so it sits up nice and high and perky. And I know we're talking about thighs, but still, if you pull it together like that, the knife's going to go through much nicer. You'll actually cut through more meat with each stroke of the knife. So I'm going to make 2 cuts right down to the bone, right in the center, about 1 inch apart, just like that. And what that's going to do, it's going to allow that marinade to get deeper into the thigh, and it's also going to make it look even cooler. And you know us, we're always trying to make things look cooler. And when you've successfully slashed all your chicken thighs, I want you to transfer those into a Ziploc bag to await the sweet hot mustard marinade, which is the next step. So in a mixing bowl, we're going to put a whole bunch of Dijon mustard. We're going to sweeten that up with some brown sugar. And then to balance that, a whole bunch of red wine vinegar. We're also going to put in some dried mustard powder, some ground chipotle, some salt, some freshly ground black pepper, and last but not least, a very, very generous shaking of cayenne. I said very generous. There you go. And then we're going to take a whisk and we're going to mix that thoroughly. And I'll be honest, when I'm mixing something like this, I'm usually daydreaming, spacing out. Sometimes I'm humming It's Raining Men in my head. But this time I was actually thinking, what else can I put in here? And then it dawned on me, I didn't put any garlic in. That would have been embarrassing. So I minced up a whole bunch of garlic, I added that, and I resumed the whisking. And once that marinade is thoroughly combined, we're going to pour it into our bag, and then we're going to give it a very, very thorough massage. All right, we got to make sure that marinade gets into all those slashes and coats every bit of every surface of every chicken thigh in that bag. So really work it over good. And you know my rule of thumb for how you can tell if you're massaging it thoroughly enough? If someone were in the room with you, it would actually feel awkward, okay? So mix it up very thoroughly. We got to make sure that marinade is going into every nook and cranny, crack and crevice. We're going to go ahead and seal that up and put it in the fridge for a minimum of 4 hours, but overnight's even better. And then once that's marinated long enough, we're going to go ahead and transfer it onto a foil-lined sheet tray, but not before we spread out some onion rings. No, not the fried delicious kind, just some regular raw onions, cut in rings. I'm going to scatter those across the bottom. I've lightly oiled that foil, by the way. I'm going to place the chicken on top of the onions. I'm going to spread them out evenly, of course. And at that point, we're going to brush and or spray a little bit of vegetable oil on top. I really want that skin to caramelize nicely. So I'm going to give it a little spritz with the vegetable spray. Like I said, you could use a brush, but the spray is very fast and easy. Although it does make this bizarre foam, which is a little off-putting. But like most foams, it's nothing to worry about. And then once your thighs have been oiled, we're going to go ahead and sprinkle a little bit of salt on top. I do want to season the skin up. And then last but not least, a little dusting of cayenne. This is, after all, sweet hot mustard chicken. And at that point, we are ready to place this chicken in the center of a very hot oven, 450 degrees, for about 35 to 45 minutes, depending on the size of the thighs, until they look like that. And you can see those slashes we did really accentuated the color. That's given it a much sportier look. And of course, we can't just go by looks. We're going to test it, make sure it's tender. I'm going to use a knife. And that should go into that meat really easily. All right, if it doesn't, it's either undercooked or you have terrible aim and you're hitting the bone. But you'll be able to tell. And by the way, you're going to have a good amount of drippings on the pan. Don't throw that away. We're going to use that. So at that point, I'm going to transfer the chicken and the onions into a serving platter. I'm going to go ahead and pour that juice into a small saucepan. Bring it up to a boil over high heat. And I'm just going to reduce that for about 3 or 4 minutes, maybe by half. And this part really is optional. You could just spoon that juice right over your chicken and serve it. But I do like to reduce it by about half, and while it's reducing, I will skim off most of the fat. And then my second favorite part of this recipe, we're going to spoon that juice slowly and seductively over each chicken thigh. And that is looking very enticing, except for that stupid hanging onion. All right, note to self, fire whoever's in charge of watching out for hanging onions. And once you spoon over your pan drippings, you're ready to serve that up. And that really is a magnificent chicken dish. And I was going to say assuming you like mustard, but that's not even true. By the time this is done, it doesn't really have a super strong mustard flavor. It really gets mellowed out by that brown sugar. And when you combine it with that vinegar and those spices, it's just a really beautiful combination. And then let's go ahead and cut into one of these. So juicy. And I know some of you don't like to cut around those bones. Too bad. Do it. The flavor really is superior. You know that old saying, the closer the bone, the sweeter the meat. And it's so true. It really does add a lot, okay? But of course, if you're a little bit more delicate than I am, you can do this with boneless, skinless, or chicken breasts. Of course, you'll have to adjust your cooking times. But I'm not going to tell you by how much. That's your penalty for not using the chicken parts I'm telling you. But anyway, just a really nice chicken dish, and one I hope you give a try to soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.